Attention, attention, all personnel. Incoming podcast. This is MASH Matters. Over and out.
It's MASH Matters, the podcast celebrating the greatest television series of all time. That would be MASH. I'm Ryan Patrick, and I'm joined by the gentleman who played Private Igor on MASH, Jeff Maxwell. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Ryan. It's Jeff Maxwell and the band.
And his all-girl orchestra.
I filled in as the guitar-playing guy this episode. God,
how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good. It's wonderful to be here in sunny Southern California. And I know you're in that other state of Illinois. How is it there? Is it sunny?
It actually is. It's been gloomy and rainy this week, which has kind of wreaked havoc on I've had a headache all week because I think of the weather and something about the barometric pressure and dew point, and I don't know. It's all meteorological, and I'm not going to get into it. But it's beautiful and sunshiny today, so I feel much, much better.
You know, I used to take flying lessons. I loved to fly, and I almost got my license in flying. But I noticed that when up in the air, I almost hit a helicopter. It wasn't in my DNA, apparently, to be a pilot. And other people could do it really well, and I couldn't. I mean, I can play golf. It's in my DNA, but flying an airplane wasn't. But also dew points confused me. There's a lot of talk about dew points in flying. And I didn't know what dew points were, and I didn't care. So I thought it better I get out of an airplane, except as a passenger. So you all thank me. Don't thank me. Go ahead. You can thank me.
On behalf of everyone on the ground,
yes.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right.
Hey, we have a special guest with us today, and this gentleman is not only a supporter of the podcast, but he is a big part of the MASH community. His name's Eric White, but you know him better in the MASH circles online as the MASH historian. And we're going to talk about, we're just going to talk about what he does and how he does it and why he does it. So let's welcome Mr. Eric White to MASH Matters. Hello, Eric.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. This is a treat for me because I have been following your stuff online for quite a while now. The MASH Historian. It's a website. You also have a social media presence. Tell us, what is the MASH Historian?
Oh man, really, what it is it's a website that I started in November of 2021. So, you know, everybody had their lockdown hobbies and something. And an idea that came out of for me was, I have this MASH collection. I should do something more with it besides just collect it. I should start talking about it and sharing it and kind of seeing how objects relate to each other and tying up the threads and telling those stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the objects, everything that is related to the show has some kind of story to it. And the central part of the collection has always been the scripts. And every script is different. They have different pages. There's different markings. There's different things that mean different things. And so it's fun just to go in and deep dive into the script, see what's there, watch the episode and follow along with the script, see what changed, what didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, that's one part of it. But that's really how it started, was just, it was time to do something with this collection I've been building for years.
Well, it's an amazing collection. And again, the mashhistorian.com is where you can find it online. And tell us, what's your history with the show? How long have you been a fan of MASH? And, what connection do you have to it?
Really, I've been a fan of it since I was a kid. I've always been interested in history, which kind of goes back to the MASH historian. Like my college degrees are in history, even though that has nothing to do with the job I have now. So in a way, it's kind of been my connection to still kind of do something that's in the history field, but in the kind of MASH being the entertainment history, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was actually born 4 years after the series ended, so I never saw it in its original run. I'm one of those MASH millennial fans and there's a lot of us apparently. I mean, it's quite a group. I was really surprised by that, and I'm surprised how many people reach out and ask questions that are now in high school or teenagers now.
Yeah,
that still find the show, and it's a lot of what I've heard through your podcast and hearing, people talk about how they watched it with their family, and that's how it started. My parents would watch the show. It was on right after the news here, because being in Central Time Zone, there's like that hour gap between like the prime time time,
Yes.
prime time
Yes.
zone. So they have to fill it with something.
Right.
And so MASH was one of those shows that they filled it with. And so it just became an evening staple.
Well, I'm fascinated in looking through your website here. You have so many scripts. Now, what did you do to get all these scripts? Did you find them on eBay, or did you have some detective agency, or what did you do?
Did you have somebody whacked?
Whacked? Yeah. Was this
Don't tell Fox. They may be missing a few. No, but
okay.
but no. I over the years
I'm looking at one the match where you have a little compilation of the scripts, and one of them is from Albert Wardrobe.
Yes,
Wardrobe was not Albert's last name. That was who he was. He was a wardrobe guy. So there wasn't a guy named Wardrobe on that. So.
Let me make a note of that. I'm gonna make sure I don't mess that up. Albert's last name was not Wardrobe. Okay, good.
Yeah. Please. Yeah. Thank you.
No, actually, so those scripts are actually some of the first ones I bought. Way back in 2007, they were on eBay. There was somebody selling a lot of 21 of them, and the story was somebody traded these in at of all places, like a Coleman lantern store in Los Angeles, and they traded MASH scripts for lanterns, and I didn't know that was possible, or MASH scripts were currency, but apparently they were. And
the Eskimos used to use them, I think, to get fish. They trade in and they get a walrus, and they go, "Oh, dinner! This is good. Give them another MASH script, honey. Let's get a penguin."
But no, so that's how it started. There was a set of 21 of those, and that's how the collection started. Was back in 2007 with those 21 scripts.
Wow!
Were all those 21 scripts from Albert and Wardrobe?
Yes. They were actually, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, they
were? Yeah, they were.
Okay.
So from what I understood, the person who sold them said that the person who traded it in owned an apartment complex, and I guess that's where he had lived because he left them behind.
Oh, how about that?
Well, Albert was a really nice guy, and he was the men's wardrobe guy, and he would get stuff and provide all the wardrobe for men. And he was a unique guy because he'd come up to you, and he started this thing called Owlie, as in the owl. And so he would get real close to you and say, "Owlie." And it sounds a little weird.
Does it?
That happens to me at least 3 times a day.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. and it was weird about the first 27 times he did it to you. But after that, you kind of get used to it. But he was a character. Good guy, though, Albert.
That's really cool. So a couple of the scripts, though, in that collection, Jeff, just to kind of build on that, were also, so they were all wardrobe connected, but the other name that was on a couple of them was Roberta.
Yeah.
So was that a name that rings a bell to you? Was like the women's costume director?
Yes. Yes. I'm trying to remember her last name, Roberta. Wait a minute. I'm not sure. I'd have to go through the memory bank. Roberta was, yes, Roberta was the women's costume person. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
How did that work with Jamie Farr's wardrobe, actually? That's kind of curious. I mean,
maybe they collaborated.
Maybe.
And then now a lot of the scripts, though, was it more than scripts? Did you also have, because I see a lot of call sheets and were there other things with these scripts?
Yeah. So a lot of, what I've found is a lot of like Albert would keep everything inside of his script. So he would have the shooting schedule, the call sheets.
Oh, wow.
He also had individual wardrobe sheets for each actor that he was costuming. So he'd have the costume notes in the back. And it looks like it was just like a sheet that he hand drew and like made copies of and just used it. He'd write the actor's name at the top, and then he would just write what scene numbers and what pieces of wardrobe were needed for each of those scenes. So those are in all of his scripts. They're kind of what I call complete scripts because they have all the production documents with them. There are a couple other production documents that I have seen. There's information about like all the guest actors and even like their contact information, their salaries for the time they're going to be there.
Really?
And then I have some scripts that belong to Jackie Cooper. And those have directors' pages inside them with like how long each scene is on film, so they could make decisions of where to cut and edit down this episode if they need to make it fit the 26 minutes.
Where did you get scripts from Jackie Cooper?
That's a kind of a fun story. I got them from his son. They sold a bunch of Jackie Cooper's items. In fact, his Emmy Award sold for like $9,000. I would have loved to have gotten my hands on that. But I was able to get, he had all of his scripts bound together of all the episodes that he directed. And I guess that's what he did with all of his scripts, like his movie scripts as well. He had them bound, and he had a company that he would have hard bind them together. And so I think he directed 12, 13 episodes, and they're all hard bound together in 3 volumes. And I was able to purchase those.
How cool is that?
Was his son selling a whole bunch of stuff, or was that just happened? Did you meet him in a 7-Eleven somewhere and go,
Lots of MASH people pass through Missouri. It's a well-known fact. But no, actually, so I think they did do a an initial auction, because you can go online and you can find the records of like the Emmy selling at one of those online like entertainment auctions, but the scripts didn't sell.
Yes.
And so I think I got them through eBay, or at least the first volume. And then I reached out, because a lot of times I'll reach out and say, hey, this is really cool, and kind of introduce, and explain what I collect, and ask if they have anything else that I might be interested in. And that's how they'll be like, sure, I have a couple other scripts, and, I'll kind of make a package deal.
So it all started with these scripts that you purchased that belonged to Albert. And then when did you decide, that this was going to be your hobby, collecting, and you kind of point out on your website that you're not necessarily collecting like the action figures and the licensed things. You're collecting these unique items that are directly connected to the show. How did you decide to start doing that?
Honestly, I think it was those scripts that really kind of spurred that on. It was like, well, these are cool because they were there.
Yeah.
And with my fascination of history in general, an object that is like going to an actual site where something happened, or seeing an artifact from a place that, an actual event, that has a special meaning attached to it, to me at least. And so the scripts are the same way. And so then I started to think, well, there's a bunch of other stuff that's connected to MASH. Like then I started to look at other stuff, and I found like press releases and licensee kits, and there's so much. It's kind of got out of control. But syndication kits. The syndication kit is really cool. I don't know if you've ever seen one. It's like this giant box, and it has a bunch of 8x10 glossies and every episode description in it, and season summaries, and it is just this massive, cool, like almost like it's supposed to look like a Foot Locker, but all the paperwork and stuff is inside of it. And I guess when a TV station would buy a syndication package of MASH, they would get that with it. So they had all the descriptions and all the episode details.
And you've just come across, eBay and directly connecting with other collectors. That's how you found your stuff over the years. Yeah,
pretty much. eBay and online auctions, and some people I've kind of gotten to know, and they'll slowly like allow me to purchase things from their collection or from them, because there are a few people that I've bought stuff from directly who worked on the show. Just kind of putting the idea in their mind that, as they think about maybe selling something from their own collection, that I'd be interested in that, and kind of give them an idea of what my collection is like now and what my goal is with it. And it's assembling this stuff and putting it all together and saving it, because a lot of this stuff was ephemeral, right? It was never meant to be saved.
Right.
A press release, was never meant to be kept by somebody. The newspaper or whatever would print the article and then just toss it. That was all it was meant to do. But some stations kept their stuff, and now they're clearing out their archives, and I've been able to get a hold of some of that material before it just gets tossed in the dumpster.
Who did you know that worked on the show, if I may ask? Well, I did just ask, so.
You did. You did. I've gotten to know a few people. Actually, I had a really good conversation a few weeks ago with Sal after your episode. I followed him on Instagram, and I get, he looked at my page, and then we had a nice conversation back and forth, and he recommended a really interesting documentary that I actually need to watch this weekend. It's on my list to do. And that was really interesting. There was a woman, and I won't give the name, but she was an intern on the show with Fox from 77 to 79. And I just got to know her. And, through eBay, she was selling a couple scripts. And then she moved halfway across the country. And as she found other stuff, as she was unboxing stuff, she would reach out to me and ask me if I was interested in purchasing the script for my collection before she listed them on eBay, basically. Wow. She had one that she wasn't too willing to part with, and I'm pretty sure I'm sure she still has it. It was either Dear Sigmund or Inga. It was one of the ones that Alan Alda wrote and directed both, and she had him sign the script.
Great.
Is there something that you have been offered but you just weren't able to get?
I've lost a few auctions that just still haunt me to this day.
Oh yeah.
There's scripts, that because there are classic episodes of MASH, right? And I think probably one of the most classic is probably 5 O'Clock Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a script for it, still don't, because the early scripts are hard to find because the show wasn't as popular the first couple seasons. And I think, from what I understand, Jeff, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the show grew as it got bigger, so they had a bigger budget, so they could hire more people.
Mm-hmm.
So more scripts would have been printed for the cast and crew and everybody else that was involved in the series. So there are more scripts out there for the later seasons because by then the show was well established. But those first couple seasons, it's hard to find scripts for them still.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, now they're 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I lost a 5 O'Clock Charlie script. And that one script, I can't remember what it sold for. It sold for $200 and some, and that was back in probably 2008, 2009, about when I was first starting to collect.
After this interview, I'm going to go out and look in the garage because I might have 5 O'Clock Charlie sitting out there just collecting mold, actually.
Oh, no.
Because it gets hot here in California.
It does.
And it gets moldy. So, yeah, 5 O'Clock Charlie. I swear, what was the one I sent you, Ryan? What was the?
You sent me the War for All Seasons.
Oh, that's one of my favorites, actually. That's one of my favorite episodes in general.
Me too.
That was one of those original 21 that I got. That's one of Albert's copies, so it has all the production documents in it too. That script, I can still see the cover of it. Like I could picture it. It's in the other room in a cabinet, locked up, but I can still picture it.
Wow.
But the script collection has grown. I only need 88 episodes to complete the set.
Yeah. Do you like reading the script?
I do, actually. So for the site, one of the features I always do for the script spotlights, I always watch the episode and follow along with it. But it's really cool to read the set directions and all the just how detailed the actual notes are of what people are wearing in some cases. Like Klinger walks in wearing this or that. And then you'll have, depending on who owned the script, you may have or who used the script on the show, they may have other additional notes. Like the wardrobe goes in and highlights all that stuff because that's the stuff that they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
There's another script that I have. It was clearly the director's copy because it has, he's penciled in all of his notes, like pan left to right or pan right to left. And then also a hand-drawn mess tent table with who's sitting where around the table. So they knew where people were sitting. Because, of course, single camera, they had to film that scene multiple times if they were all talking. So they had to make sure everybody was still sitting in the same place each time they filmed it. So he would make notes of where everybody sat at the tables.
Cool. Was there a name on that script?
I think it was Don Wise.
Wow.
That's amazing. So is there one piece in your collection that is really the most special to you?
It's like asking your favorite child. I knew that question was coming. It's the most common question.
And of course, I'm looking at the Secrets of the MASH Mess copy you have.
Yes,
so obviously,
That's it.
you go there
Right there.
now. And then, okay, your second most favorite.
All right, I won't make you pick one.
Okay.
What are some of your most precious pieces?
Yeah.
Some of the most interesting things, and actually this comes to a question I have for you, Jeff. I have a couple crew gifts. I know every year, because Ken Levine's talked about this on his blog as well, every year there would be a cast and crew gift, usually around Christmas time. And one year, everybody got a watch. I think that was the 10th anniversary watch. Actually, I have one, which that's a fun story, which I'm not sure I want to share that story. But Jeff, I think you're aware of this story maybe because I actually emailed you a picture and you forwarded it along to the person who actually owned the watch for me, which I greatly appreciate. But we can maybe tell that story. One year it was a record that had cast recordings.
Okay. Now, I just picked up a copy of that.
Did you? Okay, great.
Yes, and I didn't know what the origin of it was, so that was a cast gift.
Yeah, because on the back, it has a note from Alan Alda
Yeah.
And so, and I believe it also says something like on it, like not for distribution in all the copyright information. So yeah, that was a cast gift, because in Ken Levine's blog, he tells this story. The watch came the year before the record because everybody who was hired between after everybody got the watch and the next Christmas was excited because they thought last year was a watch. What's this year going to be? And it was a record. And so he tells that story really well in his blog. Another year, I believe, and I've seen these come up on eBay, it was a belt buckle.
Yeah.
And I've seen actually, and I'm doing a post on this in a couple of weeks because there's actually two different versions of that belt buckle.
Yes, there are.
There was one done in 74 and then one done in 81. And I have one of each. And so, and you know, it was kind of funny because I bought the later version kind of by accident. I forgot I had the other one because I haven't done a good inventory, or well, I have now, but I hadn't yet done a good inventory of everything I had. So I ended up buying another one. But then I realized they were different. And it's like, well, there's a story here. So that was actually my question for you, Jeff. What other those cast and crew gifts do you remember besides those three? Or do you still have them?
I still have the Maserati. I didn't give that up. I still have that one. I don't have the cocktail napkins anymore. Those went away. No, I remember one time thinking, oh boy, here comes the Maserati. And then there was a set of glasses. And they were nice glasses. They were inscribed, 4077. And I think I have one left because, over the years things happen and dogs bark and you drop it or something. But it was there was a lot of people and, trying to figure out what to get, and that would be a wonderful thing for everybody at the same time was pretty hard. And I'm sure there were different gifts given to certain people instead of everybody. But it was certainly very nice to, at the end of the year, end of the season, get something, as a thank you to everybody. It was very nice. And a lot of the cast would get together and put money in and do all that for it. It was very nice. I'm curious, in collecting all this stuff, has it given you great insights into something about MASH or something about the people, or what has it taught you by having all this stuff?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Other than you've wasted a lot of time and you really gotta
and money, yeah,
and spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think the one thing that it really kind of, because I don't live anywhere near Los Angeles, and I think a lot of people who live around showbiz kind of understands the detail that goes into it. And I think that's the one thing that I've learned, by looking through and reading this material, just how much really goes into creating 26 minutes of an episode, of a single episode. I mean, it's 4 days of filming, two locations, filming schedules, seeing how, who's there each day. On the back of those call sheets, it has like how many gallons of coffee they needed. Like it's that detailed on how much a day they needed, how many meals they needed each day, and just how much went into creating 26 minutes of television.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it is like a little city and everybody, needs the timing and needs the food and everything. So a lot of work went into those little 26 minutes. It really did. That's an interesting, perspective on it, interesting insights you have. Because, hey, I get it now. All this stuff doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of people, over 100 and some odd people, and 4 days to do. So it's an effort.
So how big is your collection? You said you recently did an inventory. How many pieces are in your collection?
Oh, I don't have that kind of account. There's unfortunately not yet. I am still working on a few things and trying to get photographs of everything and putting it into like an inventory software just so I keep track of it. Plus, having done the site now, and there's one post a week for almost 2 years now, I need to not post the same thing twice.
Right.
So I need a way to track what I've already done. But yeah, so there's hundreds. I mean, just in scripts there are probably 170. And then I also have I think I have all but maybe 4 or 5 of the Aftermath scripts as well.
Well, really?
And then I have one, and I did a post on it. I have one script from the McLean-Stevenson show, which was the show he did right after he left MASH. Yeah, there's just, I don't know, there's cabinets and stuff everywhere.
Is there any other Grail item that if you had the opportunity to get it, you would do it?
An Emmy Award would be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like one of those myself, actually.
Not too late, Jeff.
Not too late.
Not too late.
It's not
maybe,
too late.
maybe not.
Yep.
I don't know.
Put yourself out there.
You know, if one comes up on eBay, you could always just buy one. And...
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could.
No, because I saw the awards that you showed, Ryan, that you had just
Oh, yeah.
gotten
Yeah.
right around the 40th anniversary of the finale.
Yes.
Were those Directors Guild or which were those?
The Humanitas Awards.
Okay, that's right. Yes. Yeah. So I have actually a Directors Guild award that was presented to Gene Reynolds in '92.
Hey.
I think that was like an achievement award type deal because his wife also got one. So I have both. I have his and his wife's actual statuette from that. But an Emmy award would be something else because, or at least, won by MASH in some way. And the Jackie Cooper one would have been a really, really good way to fulfill that. But $9,000 is a little out of reach.
So you mentioned it, but let's talk about it. You recently went to the Smithsonian.
I did.
Tell us about that.
So I know you two were also interviewed for an article that was in the Smithsonian Magazine back in September.
Yeah.
And I was as well. And they extended the offer to come out and see the exhibit. And if I did, to let them know, and they would connect me with one of the curators of the exhibit. And so my brother and I both went out there. And actually, I went to college in Virginia, so I didn't live too far from D.C. for a couple of years. And so just went out to visit some friends and hang out there. My brother went back with me, and then I had a day where we just had in D.C. Made an appointment and went and saw the signpost and the current Entertainment Nation exhibit that the Smithsonian has, which is a really good exhibit. And they're going to rotate items in and out for, I think he said, the next 20 years is how long this exhibit's going to last.
Oh, my gosh, really?
Wow.
So things will be rotated in and out. So it's possible that other MASH items could be switched with rotated with the signpost. Because like right now they have Archie Bunker and Edith Bunker's chairs from the series on display alongside the signpost. And so he gave us like a brief tour of the exhibit, and that was kind of it after about 15 minutes. And I'm like, well, this can't be everything, kind of a long drive. But yeah. And he said, I thought you'd like to see some of the stuff in the archive. And it's like, yeah. Yes, as a matter of fact, I would. And so we went into the Smithsonian's archive, and there's it is a mind-boggling space.
Yeah.
And I know they have warehouses across the country that are climate controlled and properly, these really cool, like basically micro chamber cabinets and so he was opening these cabinet doors and letting us see some of this stuff like Fonzie's jacket and Indiana Jones's fedora and Spock's original ears from the original Star Trek.
Wow.
He opened one door and it was full of Muppets. I'm not sure if they were supposed to be there, but they were there.
You just described my bedroom from like 1980.
and then we started getting into MASH stuff. He had taken a few MASH things out and laid them out on the table. The dress that Klinger wore, it was the Ginger Rogers dress that Klinger wore with the headdress with it. They had that one out so we could see it. Hawkeye's shirt, his Hawaiian shirt, that was out so we could see it on a table. And so was one of Margaret's shirts, her actual fatigue shirt, not the black turtleneck, which is interesting. I wonder where that black turtleneck is, because that's like the iconic shirt that she wore a lot, right? That's kind of like Hawkeye's blue shirt.
Yes.
Margaret's black turtleneck is just as iconic, I would say. And then we started going back through other cabinets, and he would open a drawer, and there was the martini glasses from the swamp, an unopened jar of olives from the swamp. They took the sets as they finished them in 83, and they left it exactly. Everything is still as it was left, and so it was really cool. They just keep pulling back these things. But the thing that I've always wondered what happened to one thing. It's in the Officers Club, the sign with all the names on it. This is MASH 4077 on it.
Uh-huh.
That's in the background of every press photo, every cast photo, basically.
Yes, with all the signatures.
Yes,
and,
yes.
the handwriting. Yep.
And we go in the back corner of the room, and he pulls a sheet off this, what looked like a table, but it was that sign on a rolling cart. And I mean, it just took my breath away seeing that sign in person and all the signatures on it. And so I was able to get pictures of it. And Dan Harrison's been a big help too. We actually have been able to identify some of the names on that sign.
I saw your article. Yeah, that's an incredible article. And thanks to Dan for helping you with that.
Yes, yes, for sure. And so my pictures were, of course, I'm just overwhelmed and by this experience, and so my pictures weren't the greatest. So I reached out to the archivist at the Smithsonian, and he sent me more detailed pictures. He actually went back and took better pictures and sent them to me. So I forwarded those on to Dan, and we were able to identify a few more names on there. So it's just kind of this again. It was what a day.
Oh my gosh.
What an hour and a half that was. I mean, getting to see the signpost was one thing, but getting to see this stuff. And I remember a question that was asked on the show at one point was, why isn't the stuff displayed more often? And I asked him that. And he said, we'd love to. The problem is it's expensive to ship. It's expensive to insure. Mm-hmm. Objects like that. If they go to another museum, it has to be an institution that can meet their climate regulations and their lighting rules to make sure that the objects are not damaged. Because as you can see in the photos of Hawkeye's shirt, his shirt is damaged by the light from that exhibit that they did in the 80s. That shirt was on display for 2 solid years.
Wow.
Under lights. And it's faded it quite a bit. And you can see where it was folded and where the fade lines are. And that was just, of course, lighting's better now. LED is not as harsh as incandescent bulbs would have been in the 80s. But they still did their toll over 2 years under those harsh lights, for every day. But that's still one of the most popular exhibits they've ever had.
The Binding Up the Wounds.
Binding Up the Wounds exhibit, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was able to share some stuff with them. I digitized that record, actually that cast gift record, and I gave it to the Smithsonian, so they have a digital copy of it.
Oh, nice!
Because I thought that was a cool thing to have, because they're slowly building up like their digital sound collection, and so they asked for a copy of that. I actually have an original brochure advertising the exhibit. They don't even have one of those, so I scanned it and sent that to them. And so I have a couple of the exhibit catalogs, which there's a couple on eBay right now. If anybody's interested in that exhibit catalog, I highly recommend one if you don't have one. They're really neat to look through, and it lists every object that the Smithsonian holds for MASH in the back of it.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a long list.
It's a long list.
Yes.
Wow.
But it is a neat little booklet, and it's well worth I think they sell for like $20-$30 on eBay. It's well worth it.
Well, I look forward to seeing what else you put out there on the website. I really am impressed with not only your collection, I'm also very envious of your collection, but the time and the effort that you put into telling the stories behind those items. Because it'd be very easy just to post the pictures and not say anything else. And, it would have some merit. But the fact that you go in and you do all this research and you find the story behind these items, I commend you. It's a tremendous undertaking, and you're doing a great job with it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I say I'm like preserving the production history of MASH in a way. I'm trying to save the things that normally wouldn't have been saved. And I've been listening to your podcast since the beginning, really, and I kind of feel in a weird way that the podcast and my site work really well together because, you can see the objects and learn about the things and the stuff that went into making the show. And then you're doing great work in interviewing the people who were there and getting those stories and preserving those stories, conducting those oral histories, really, right? And
yes.
And preserving those stories. So I feel like we're preserving the history of the show in multiple ways.
No, I agree. I think that, we're doing it from an audio standpoint, an oral audio history of the show, and you're doing it from a visual standpoint, and you're able to catalog and capture these items that a lot of us have not seen, or if we have seen them, we've only seen one or two out in the wild. Again, these were not commercially mass-produced things. These were only really seen by the production team. I'm glad that Albert left those scripts in his apartment and that the landlord needed some lanterns because had he not needed lanterns, we wouldn't be talking today.
Where would I be if that hadn't happened? I mean,
I'm dying to know what Albert's landlord needed with lanterns. What was he going to do with lanterns?
Maybe Coleman lanterns were something they collected. And it's like scripts. I don't need those. I don't need those. I want some lanterns, and maybe somebody will trade.
His house was just very dark. That's the problem.
Scripts don't give off much light.
That's right.
They really don't.
So, how can people find you?
Well, the website is themashhistorian.com. And as you mentioned, there's also Instagram at The MASH Historian, same for Twitter at MASH Historian, and then Facebook, The MASH Historian, also on there. And the posts go out weekly on Mondays usually, unless there's a week where I don't get it done before Monday. And then it may go out on Tuesday or Wednesday. That's been known to happen, but I try to post weekly, and there are themes to the post, like scripts. There's one type of post per month is the way I try to feature it. And then like I've got a few posts coming up that are going to be really interesting. Like the one is Brian Rooney's book about who you interviewed. And actually that's how I found his book.
Yes.
So I'm linking back to his interview, on the podcast and on the site.
Yeah.
And then, oh man, I've got one coming up that's also, let's see, the actual movie script. I have one of those.
Oh, nice.
That'll be coming up. And then the belt buckles, that post will be next month as well. And then there were 2 novels written about MASH units in the Korean War. You mentioned the movie Battle Circus, about the movie being made in the 50s and being about the Korean War. There were actually 2 novels that were released about the MASH units in the Korean War before the novel MASH was.
Oh, really?
And I picked up copies of those. One's called Battalion Medics, and the other's called Sword and Scalpel. And so I'm going to do a review of those 2 as well.
Very cool.
They predate MASH by almost 20 years.
There were 2 products made I believe they were made by somebody on the crew. Either they did it personally or they had friends that could produce these things. But the original belt buckles were made by, or at least created and made along with somebody else's help by somebody on the crew. And then they were so popular, then there were jackets that said MASH on the back of them. And those 2 things I gulped down immediately. And then later on, when MASH got real popular, the belt buckles were kind of mass produced as a product. The original ones were not. They were just simply made for everybody on the set. So that's kind of interesting in terms of the differences between the 2 buckles. There are a little bit different because one of them was made very carefully by, hand somewhere, and the others are a little bit more machine produced. But the jackets, the original jackets, which one of them I still have in the closet, it's moth food right now, but I'm trying to prevent that from happening. And they were made specifically for everybody on the show. And then later that got a little bit more popular and they began to be mass produced as well. So the 2 things, if you ever come across either of the jackets, they'd be worth grabbing if you can.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, are the jackets blue?
Yes, they are.
I've seen one before, and I wasn't sure if it was a cast gift or if it was a mass-produced item, but I'll keep my eye out for one again, because I did see one before.
One of the mass-produced jacket is a little thicker. It's a little bulkier inside. I think it even has some felt or something inside. The original one did not.
Okay.
But either one of them is a really cool thing if you can find it.
Yeah, the belt buckles, I do have one of each. The original that was made by the crew member, and they're all individually numbered. And then I have also the one that was done again in 81. That's kind of why I want to do a post on it, because people are selling the 81 version as like the handmade one. And I want to warn people that that's not the case. There are 2 different ones, and here's how to identify which is which, and just to make sure nobody's, thinking that they are getting something that they're not.
That's great.
And after your appearance on this show, I'm sure somebody will come up with an Emmy for you for $11 or something. You'll spend a lot of money. I'm sure they will.
It's made of chocolate, but hey.
You know what? I'd be okay with the chocolate one.
Yeah.
I mean, chocolate has its uses. I'll be honest. Really quick, do you want to hear the story of the watch?
Oh, yes,
Sure.
So the watch, I know. And I don't know, Jeff, if you still have yours or not, but there was a watch that was made for cast and crew members, and it's for the 10th anniversary. So it has the MASH 10 with the candle on it, a logo on the dial. And actually, I have it right here because I pulled it out of my cabinet because I wanted to be able to have it in front of me to make sure I got the name correct and who's on the dial. The person's name on the dial is David Pollock.
Hey.
And, of course, he was a writer on the show and a former guest, a previous guest of the podcast. And that's actually what I did. After I heard him on the podcast, I had this watch, and I'm like, okay, I need to get the backstory. So I sent a picture with an email to the MASH Matters email address, and Jeff you replied and told me that you'd forwarded on to David and gave him my information. And he reached out to me within about a day and said, as a matter of fact, he does remember that watch, and he had no idea it was gone.
Oh, no.
He told me the story that I think he said in 2016 or 17, him and his wife, their house was broken into and some jewelry and stuff had been stolen. And he had never thought to see if the watch had been stolen either.
Wow.
And it wasn't until he got the picture that you forwarded him that he realized that the watch was also gone.
Oh my gosh. That's a great story. Oh, well, it's not a great, it's a terrible story. Yeah.
Yeah, I offered to return it, and he told me that it was now mine, and he hoped I enjoyed it. So the stolen watch and the scripts traded for lanterns and just the stories behind all this stuff just kind of is a big part of the fun of collecting.
Man.
May I ask what sort of business you're in? Are you in?
So I work for a fintech company. We make the software that runs banks.
Oh, wow.
So that's where you get your money. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know the tricks of the trade.
Where are you going to be working next week?
Oh, man.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Again, check out the website, themashhistorian.com. Look on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter. Give them a follow. We'll put links to all your social media in our show notes for this episode. And just keep it up, man. Keep up the great work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invite. I do want to just add that I was really excited a few weeks ago when you had Will Friedle on, because I am the age where I grew up watching Boy Meets World. So I listened to their podcast as well. And what's funny is that the MASH Historian Instagram account follows the Pod Meets World Instagram account. And I've had several people reach out and ask, what's the name of the podcast that Will listens to, the MASH podcast? So I've sent them your direction. So
well, thank you.
Maybe you'll get the Boy Meets World bump. I don't know.
Yes. Well, we did. Yes, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really cool because they're doing a live tour.
Yes.
And I'm going to see them in Kansas City later this year. So I'm really excited for that too. So
very cool.
But it was really cool to hear, because I know he does talk about MASH in and just about every episode of the podcast. So
he does talk about it a lot. He talks about our podcast too.
He does.
We can't thank him enough for that.
Yeah. So I have had a few people reach out and ask on the Boy Meets World side, and it's like, what's the name of that episode of that podcast that Will listens to? And
so when do you start the podmeetsworldhistorian.com?
Oh man. That sounds like a whole different can of worms. MASH scripts are kind of were made at a unique time because there wasn't a Xerox machine yet, really. Mm-hmm. Things were mimeographed, and there was different ways of making the covers. So there's ways you can tell whether it's just a photocopy or an original, and there's ways to tell the difference.
Uh-huh.
By the early 1990s, though, and up through 2000 when Boy Meets World was on, that's a lot harder because they would have just been photocopied pages, essentially, on a Xerox machine. And those are a lot easier to fake, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think it'd be a lot more difficult to collect stuff like that.
Yeah, and besides, there are a few dead people on that show. I mean, you have a lot of dead people.
Everybody's still alive.
Yeah.
They're all still in attics. Nobody's gone to clean out the attic yet.
That's right. Well, Eric, thank you.
Thank you.
Check it out, mashhistorian.com. Until next time, here's looking up your old address.